Over the years, I've made some major financial mistakes in my marriage that have literally cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tune in to see how you can avoid those same mistakes and maximize your marriage's financial goals.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome back to the StewardShift Show. I'm your host, Troy Solomon Levy, and I have my very beautiful wife, Rachelle Levy.
Hello, everyone.
All right. So during this episode, we're talking a little bit about how spouses can support their counterparts financially in marriage. And this is something that we've had to learn over the course of, we've been married for almost 15 years now, and we have not gotten it perfectly at all throughout the years, but it is something that we've grown, I hope. Am I
Yes,
okay?
Most definitely.
We've grown with throughout the years. So look, as Kev on stage and Melissa Frederick said, man, marriage be hard. And Rachelle, it's probably been harder for you than it has been for me. Generally speaking, you make marriage to you pretty easy. I know throughout the years that I've given you some gray hairs. I know that.
As long as you're self-aware.
I'm very
That's a start.
very aware of it. All right. But I mean, honestly, though, like, what about marriage has been hard? And I'm kind of grimacing as I'm asking this question, but you have full reign to tell the audience what about marriage has been difficult?
Well, first off, I feel as though when we first started out, I didn't have like the best communication style. And I know this is sort of harped on a lot nowadays. I've been hearing it a lot, but it's so true. Like, men cannot read your mind. Like, you have to literally spell out what's going on. And
Is it that bad?
but like, I feel as though starting now, I would just like get mad about whatever is going on and just hopefully you feel that I'm mad and try to figure out what's going on and then by figuring out what's going on, fix it. But that's not the way. It just makes marriage harder. So I feel as though starting out, that made it really, really hard. Just not communicating outright what was going on, what was bothering me, and having that space to just communicate with each other on how to make it better. What else? I would say the other thing that was hard was just adjusting to each other. We both grew up very differently. He is the only child and I'm one of 9. So for me, everything is just open. Like, everything is ours, not just mine, and that's not just with him, that's with my family, just a very open person. Whereas you were very, like, I would say possessive of, like, not possessive, but just.
Yeah, let's find a better word for that. Jeez.
I would say, like.
I like my own space.
Yeah, you like your own space.
And my own things.
And your own things. And so that was a big adjustment. And just in overall, bringing 2 different people from different upbringings and different backgrounds together, that alone makes marriage hard. But just having the right person to navigate that with is key. And so I think it's important to have like the right person for you to navigate these hard things with. And so, like, what do you think are like the important things to have in a spouse to navigate life with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few key things, and then we're really gonna like home in on finances for the StewardShift show. But I mean, honestly, I feel like marriage is the number one relationship that you should steward well, right? That's just off the rip. If you can steward that relationship there, a lot of other things will fall into place in life. So what are we looking for in a spouse? Number one, and for me, I'm a believer. So number one, before I'm looking at looks, body, whatever, I'm looking for a person who serves the Lord, who loves God with all of their heart. Because I think that while it doesn't cover everything, you could be a believer and love God and still have a lot wrong with you. That is a reality. However, I think someone who has that number one thing going for themselves should more often than not be a person of growth, someone who's convicted by God of who they are and who they can be. So if that person isn't committed to the Lord, I just personally feel like they're not maximizing who they truly can be in the long run. So that's number one. But secondly, you're going to want to look for someone who is a person of growth. And this is related to the first thing that I said, but someone who's not willing to grow is not a person that's worth getting married to. So we got married when we were 22 years old. Okay.
22.
Now, if I never grew, Rachelle, you wouldn't be married to the person that I am today. You would still be married to that 22-year-old boy.
Would we still be married?
No.
No.
Are you out of your mind? Heck no. If you were still married to that same person that was back then, no, we would have been broken up a long time ago.
Yeah.
So having a person to grow alongside with is going to be paramount to everything. Now, I'm going to say that financially speaking, we're going to really home in here on finances. You married someone who was broke.
Yeah, we're both broke.
Yeah, that's true.
Young, dumb, and broke.
Young.
All those things.
Very true. Right. So I think for you, what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't number one on your list, at least not back then, to marry someone who had a lot of money. Right. And I'm actually, well, maybe I should ask you, if God forbid you had to do it all over again.
Right.
Would you have married someone who was like broke as I was back then? I'm not broke today, but as I was back then.
Still as a 22-year-old or as
you are the age that you are today. Would you marry someone who you are today? Would you marry someone who had the financial, like the assets that I did not have back then?
No.
All right. Follow-up question. We're talking about finances now. Does that make you a gold digger?
What would that make
I'm asking.
I need security. As a 22-year-old, we were growing. We were both growing together. And I feel as though now, if God forbid anything happens to you, I have 3 kids. I have, a mortgage. I have different things that's going on. I will definitely not get someone who would not be an asset, but would be, for lack of a better word, a burden to me. No, a financial burden, I should say.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So let's just, to be clear, that would be a major factor if, God forbid, something happened to me.
I mean, I'm not looking for like a gazillionaire, but someone that is financially stable. I don't feel as though at 22 we were financially like stable.
We weren't.
No. But I would look for somebody that's financial.
Back then, even though I didn't have any assets to my name like that, I did have a vision for my life and for our lives. I had ambition.
Right.
Now, would you marry someone who comes to the table with ambition?
No, we're too old for ambition. Listen.
Okay.
I have kids.
Got you.
College to pay for, or high school, whatever. I don't have time for ambition. I'm sorry.
At this stage in your life. Okay.
No,
fair enough.
No.
I'm actually with you on that. Yeah, no harm, no foul at all. But we did, when we got married, we had to learn how to be on the same page financially and how to have the same financial goals. Do you think we had the same financial goals when we first got married?
We had no financial goals when we got married.
That's true.
We did not know what we were doing. It was not even a thought in our minds. Hence why, like the first financial decision we made as a married couple was like the worst decision ever. And that was getting a timeshare, literally during our honeymoon. So yeah, we didn't have any goals.
Yeah. And I wish that we had set out some, I wish we were in a better financial headspace back then, but neither here nor there.
Right.
We eventually had to learn how to work together financially. And I think, just the way God works, and we are believers, God uses tragedy. He uses negative things in our lives to hopefully to glue people together.
Right.
And when I look over the past 15 years or so, I definitely see how that has happened. Where God has used those negative things to give us financial wisdom and whatnot.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So just to kind of share with our audience a little bit of our story. Again, we got married when we were 22 years old, right? And we made a really bad financial decision. Like, we started off marriage with a timeshare on our honeymoon, really, really bad. And just to kind of give some context, we got married like right after Rachelle finished college. You finished college a year after I did. This was 2009. Right. And this was at the height of the financial collapse in America. And things were just really, really tough. So you graduated with a degree in nursing. But by that time, we had moved to Michigan because I was in grad school in Michigan when we had gotten married. And Michigan's economy, from what I remember, was ranked 50 out of obviously 50 states. Yep. And nurses who had retired were coming back into the workforce, and nurses who were at retirement age, quote unquote, were not retiring, and no one was like hiring new grads.
Right.
And it was really, really hard. And we had anticipated that, because everyone told us that, oh, you're a nurse, you can find a job anywhere. And that was not the case. So we thought that we were going to start off marriage with like you making full-time a paycheck and whatnot. Again, I'm in grad school taking a full-time course load. I wasn't able to work full-time at that time. But after our honeymoon, you got pregnant like 3 weeks later.
Yes.
Couldn't find a job. I couldn't really work full-time. That was a really, really hard time in our lives.
It was.
And that tested us.
It sure did. It sure did. And I feel as though during that time, you really stepped up. You stepped up and you were cutting hair.
Yeah, I was a barber.
What else?
I was a referee for flag football games. Freezing in Michigan cold.
What else? And you had your stipend coming in.
I graded papers.
Yeah.
I did have a little stipend from my future employers, which was a blessing. It wasn't enough to do a whole lot. But we had a baby on the way, man. We had rent to pay. Yeah. And we had to cut some things. We had to cut cable for a long time.
True.
We got on WIC and food stamps, which was a blessing during that time in our lives.
And there is no shame in that. Yeah. Even if it's for a season, if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do.
Yep.
No shame. No shame.
So we're saying all that to say that during that season of our marriage, I had to support Rachelle in a major way, right? Now, even though for her career, she would, we knew that she was going to make more money than I did for, in terms of what I was getting paid to do later after grad school. But, we just had to kind of pivot, and I just had to support in a very, very major way during that season of our lives. Now, after grad school, I graduated thinking that I was going to, make a certain amount, and I don't even want to get into that, but I didn't come out making the amount right away that I thought I would be making from my employers. And that was for about 6 months. So another thing that I thought was just so negative at that point in time was that I knew that I was getting hired as a pastor in New Jersey, and you're from New Jersey, born and raised. Right. And the blessing is that I was looking at like apartments and whatnot that were costing like north of $2,000 a month, which may not sound like a whole lot nowadays, but 15 years ago, that was a whole lot. Okay. And when I found out like what I was going to be making right away, we had to pivot again and move in with your parents.
Yes. Which was a huge blessing.
Yes. I was upset though.
Huge blessing. I didn't mind it so much, but I know how you are.
With my own space.
Yes.
And,
So, but just some advice in terms of moving in with your parents. If that's what you need to do, that could be a huge blessing in your life. And do not feel any sort of type of way, any shame with that. If it's for a season, that is just for that season. Just go ahead, swallow your pride, swallow whatever, misconceptions may be out there. It's the best thing that could have happened to us.
Yeah.
Truly.
It is. It is. And here's the reason why. Is that we lived with them for 4 years, and that's how we were able to stack up to save a down payment for our first home. Mm-hmm. And so that was like that thing. It really turned into a huge blessing, something I just dreaded doing. I did not want to do that, but it was one of the hugest blessings and gave us the trajectory for the rest of our lives. Right. Now, let's fast forward a few years. We had our first son. Then you got pregnant again and had another son in 2013. Then you decided that you wanted to go back to grad school and get your DNP, Doctor of Nursing Practice, which historically just sets nurses down a track that like almost doubles your income from being an RN. Right. Now, that was in 2014. I want to say that 2014, 2015 was like a crazy period in our lives.
It was.
Because we bought our first home end of 2014, got it renovated beginning of 2015. Then we found out that you were pregnant with our last son in 2015 as we were renovating that home. I had just started pastoring a church on my own for the very first time.
Right.
And you had started grad school in the fall of 2014.
Right.
And then to add on top of all of that, I decided, me and my friend, we were like, yo, let's get a doctoral degree together. Right. And I added that to the mix without really consulting you.
Right.
I said something about it, but it was more informative and less, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Thank you. And the way our marriage was supposed to be.
Right.
We had agreed to be more collaborative than anything. And
At
I didn't
that
collaborate.
time, I don't feel as though we were as collaborative.
Okay.
Just in general. I feel like I was still at that stage of like just brewing in whatever was going on and not expressing like how I really felt.
Yeah.
But during that time, like what really like clicked in my head is like I'm going to class at night. Most of my classes were during the evening because I still worked during the day. Yeah. So I was at class at night. At that time for your program, you had to go away.
I was gone for like a couple of weeks because we had intensive classes.
Yeah, you had to go away. I think it was Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago.
And so at that point, I'm pregnant, and then we have two young kids. And so I have to find a babysitter to watch them while I'm in night class, and then pick them up, go back home, and, still do all the motherly things. And so I was on the phone with my sister, and she was like, so Troy is away right now for school. And I was like, yeah. I explained to her the cohort thing and how they have to go away for that. And she was like, but I thought you were doing your school. I'm like, yeah, I am. But, he decided to do that. And she was just like, well, Troy just do whatever he wants to do. And I was like, wow.
Firstly, tell your sister to mind her business. That's number one. But number two, she was right.
And I was like, wow, he really didn't really talk to me about this. And so that's when, I communicated to you, like, we really didn't discuss this. And I wish you had, because it's a lot going on right now. And to make the long story short, ultimately I had to drop out because it was just becoming too much.
Yeah. And that was hard. And I don't really think I saw the effect that it had on you back then or how it affected our family financially today. But to this day, literally, we probably missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Because thankfully, you did end up finishing. You finished last year.
Yes.
Thank God. But that's like how many years after you should have been finished. Right. You know what I mean? Like at least 5-7 years or so. after you should have been finished and, of course, getting all of that income of being a nurse practitioner during that time. And I betrayed my commitment to you to support you
Right.
during that time. You started. This was a dream of yours. Right. I've since apologized. Okay. And thank you for accepting my apology. But a few weeks ago, you said to me, hey, and this was a moment of frustration for you and maybe a moment of frustration for our home financially, right?
Right.
You said to me, hey, I'm not like harping on this at all, but I'm kind of venting. You asked me, why did you decide to do your doctoral degree? Like before me or while I was doing it? You remember this?
Yeah, because your doctoral degree didn't add one penny.
Not one penny to my income. Not one.
Not one penny.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't know like what else to say. Like I said, I apologize, but I wanna give you time to, and this is in front of our audience, what was going through your mind? Like it affected us financially, clearly. Talk to me about that decision that I went rogue on years and years ago, how it's still affecting you. We're talking almost 10 years later.
I mean, I don't feel as though it's affected me deeply.
No, but it affected you.
But like, obviously, you step down from pastoral ministry and we still have some goals that we want to work through. And so I feel as though right now, if, I was already in that position making money, I think we would have accomplished those goals that we are still now trying to reach, as opposed to still hustling to accomplish those goals. And that's frustrating. Yeah. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. We're moving on. We're still trying to do what we have to do to accomplish those goals. But at that moment specifically, I feel as though I was just like, man, it was frustrating.
No, and I hear you. You have every right to be frustrated and to voice those frustrations to me, because it's frustrating for me also. Like I look back on that time when I betrayed maybe not betrayed your trust, that might be a bit much, but betrayed the communication and support that I had pledged to you.
Right.
And I kicked myself. I'm like, man, why did I feel the need to interrupt what Rachelle was, what she was doing when we could have just been further along? She wouldn't have had to drop out. And I feel it. I feel it also. I mean, that's just part of our journey. And I'm talking to our audience now that for marriage, communication and support for your spouse is going to be huge. There are going to be times, just like Rachelle and I, where I have supported you financially, or been the main support for our home financially. There are times when you have been the main support of our home financially. And I feel like for us, it's a joy to do that for each other, to lift each other up when the other may not be doing as well, or may have to take leaps of faith. Like stepping down from pastoral ministry has been a leap of faith.
Right.
And our home doesn't exactly have all of the financial blessings that we've had in the past, but you have been supportive, very supportive of our home financially during this time. And that's a huge blessing.
Right. And when I was going through school and going through my journey of getting my doctoral degree, you had to step up and be the main financial support in just in the home in general. During that time, first of all, it was hard. Yeah. It was like the hardest thing I ever had to do. So, sometimes cooking dinner or taking the kids to basketball practice and all the other things, you were the main person that had to do that. And also during that time, my father fell ill and we ended up having to be caretakers. And he and my mother moved in. And so that was another thing that you had to step up to, because I was in school. Although, a lot of the responsibility was on me as well, but that took me away from other things that had to be done in the home, which you had to step up and do. And I believe at that time too, for a moment, I wasn't working.
Yeah. For a few months.
Yeah, for a few months, I wasn't working. So two things, we had built our financial position well enough where I could like not work, but also you were there supporting financially during that time as well.
Yeah, which was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to do. All right, so I know that someone in our audience is like, all right, Troy, Rachelle, y'all are nice together, y'all work well together, whatever. My spouse just hasn't been working well with me financially. What do I do if my spouse isn't willing to, just kind of walk hand in hand with me? So, Rachelle, what's the first suggestion that you would make to someone who's in that position?
I don't know how much more we can harp on this, but communication is key. Like I said, especially for women, we literally think men could just read our minds and just figure out what's wrong with us. If we feel as though our spouse is going to a different direction from us and we want to reel them in and have just a collaborative conversation about finances, communication is key. Like, communicate your frustrations, communicate what's not going right, what we need to work on, and communicate your concerns. Because especially for women, like, financial security period is big for us. And I know for me, and especially with kids and stuff, financial security is even bigger. So really just communicating that and like saying, hey, if I don't feel secure, that is a big problem. So really communicating what's going on.
Got it. And I think for me, I would also, as a person of faith, prayer is going to be key as well. Because there were moments, Rachelle, where yes, I think you did struggle with communication earlier on, but I was just like going 100 miles an hour doing my own thing. Right. Of course, I'm a family man, so I don't mean like doing my own thing in that sense, but like it was almost as if I'm kind of, if it doesn't go through me, then it just ain't happening. That was just one of those dudes, right? And you had to share with me and communicate with me, and even when you communicated your best at that time, a lot of times it didn't penetrate.
It didn't penetrate. I had to get on my knees, y'all. Get on my knees and
pray. Okay, well, I'm just making sure. I'm just making sure.
Get on my knees and do what?
Okay, it's the G-rated show. Let's keep it moving. Rachelle had to pray.
I had to pray.
And literally, there have been, I would say, at least 2 or 3 times when you were at your wit's end. Mm-hmm. And you put me in God's hands. You're praying, and God literally, the Holy Spirit would speak to me and convict me of something that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing, or wasn't doing that I should have been doing. So, and when I would come to him like, yo, Rachelle, I just had like this crazy feeling. I feel like God is telling me, you would literally, at least a couple of times, burst out in tears.
Right.
Like, babe, I've been trying to communicate that to you, but I didn't know what else to do. So I put it in God's hands. I got on my knees and prayed. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thankful to God that, he shared that with you. So, those are some things. And of course, I'm sure there are other practical things that you can do, but I would start right there. Communicate, over communicate, and pray. And matter of fact, that's going to be the shift for today, is to over communicate with your spouse. Now, there are ways to communicate without being accusatory. There are ways to communicate without putting down or being condescending. So learning how to communicate is going to be a very, very good thing. But just like do your best to over communicate. And we're going to end with this scripture. It's one of my favorite scriptures about marriage. And this is about marriage and money as well. This is Amos 3 and verse 3. It says, can 2 people walk together without agreeing on the direction? And financially speaking, if you're walking together, and by the way, you can be happily married, but not have a good financial goal, like not going in the same direction financially. That's very, very possible. True. But I'm challenging all of us as married couples to communicate about that direction and to travel in that same direction together, especially financially speaking, so that you can reach your financial goals. Because I promise you, you're not going to reach your financial goals as quick or as efficient if you're not communicating about them and going in the same direction together.
Amen.
Amen. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. This is coming from almost 15 years of marriage wisdom, a marriage where we've had to support each other and vice versa. And it's been a pleasure to do that. And I'm sure it will be a pleasure for you, the audience, to do that with your spouse as well. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you next time on the StewardShift Show.